It's a discussion. Normally we are having panel discussions, but this time around we are having a discussion between just two gentlemen who will sit here and discuss banking and how it can be reimagined. Navigating the digital shift in banking, and this is what we are going to be covering in this next segment that we're going to start right away. And for this, I'd like to invite Mr. Ahmed Gaber onto the podium, onto the stage here. He's the co-founder and CEO of CoorB, the sponsors of FiNext this year. Ahmed Gaber's 23-year leadership journey in Fintech with pivotal roles and as in at the Entertainer and Visa underscores expertise in digital payments, strategic partnerships, and financial inclusion, focusing on customer-centric solutions for competitive edge and sustainability growth. And I can tell you how popular Entertainer was. I had one as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Ahmed Gaber. Please take your seat. The next gentleman that I'd like to invite onto the stage, he's already coming in. He's a very famous persona, I can tell you this. And he is the chairman of Mena Fintech Association and founder of FILS. His name is Mr. Namir Khan, with a background in business from Cambridge Business School. Namir is dedicated to pioneering sustainability in e-commerce through strategic partnerships and a commitment to eco-consciousness. He's driving industries towards responsible commerce and carbon neutrality. Stay tuned as Namir continues to lead the digital payments revolution and blending economic growth with environmental stewardship for a greener future. And this is going to be a great discussion that we are actually staying tuned to. So over to you guys now. Let's hear it for Mr. Ahmed Gaber and Mr. Namir.
At least I deserve. Okay. Good afternoon, or I can say, yeah, good afternoon now. It's 12 o'clock. Namir, thank you very much for being my guest today, and thank you everyone for tuning in and for listening to us today. I'd like first to introduce Namir Khan to you. So Namir, it will be great to tell us who you are.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And Ahmed, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being with you. And Namir Khan, I wear two hats. First hat is I'm the founder and the chairman of the Middle East and North Africa Fintech Association, working very closely with regulators from Morocco across the region to UAE, Oman, Qatar, in some instances Pakistan as well, so covering the very majority landscape. The second hat that I wear is I'm the founder and CEO of FILS, which is a sustainability infrastructure platform that enables businesses of all sizes to embed sustainable action into the business models and customer journeys, and most importantly, democratizing and giving access to carbon markets for financial institutions and non-FIs as well.
Thank you, Namir. My first question to you would be, how easy or difficult is it for you to explain to people the importance of sustainability?
So the importance of sustainability, it wasn't that easy, to be very fair, previously. But over the course of the past 12 to 18 months, it has really accelerated in terms of the understanding of what sustainability is, because there's more interest. Today, I'll give some numbers out. 70% of the consumers today want the banks and the financial institutions to be sustainably driven. 80% of the current generation is actually evaluating brands, whether they are sustainable or not, or they are aligned with their values, which is underlying, supporting with some form of sustainable action. The third thing we saw when I was building the platform with my team, there was less traction 24 months ago, right? So I started this almost 1.8 years, almost like a year and a half ago. But I told my team at that point, wait for COP28 and build for COP. Right now, there may be a less traction, but build for COP because you would not have enough time to cater all of them. And that is exactly what happened. So COP28 accelerated the awareness, the interest, and realization of sustainability being a very key enabler. And I'll be happy to throw some numbers to you later on as well.
Thank you, Namir. Namir, by the way, I just want to tell you that we didn't agree on the questions. I wanted this conversation to be natural and normal without any planning. And I said to him, I will just maybe corner you with some questions without meaning to corner him. So Namir, geographically, like I come from Egypt and you come from Pakistan. Geographically, you think there is competing priorities when there is higher items in the agenda of the governments or of the banks when it comes to profitability, when it comes to currency stability, and then it can compete with the sustainability and the purpose of the sustainability. Do you think you feel this kind of competition sometimes? You feel that some countries like UAE are more ready, but some countries like developing countries are not ready?
I love this question, and I thank you for trying to corner me, but you cannot. So how it is, let me tell you. Net zero, this is very important for everyone to understand this who's in the room. Everyone is talking about sustainability, correct? It's on top of everyone's agenda. You pick up any newspaper, you pick up any corporate, any retail, anyone is talking today about sustainability, correct? Correct. Now, why is this happening? There's a net zero agenda for the world. By 2050, everything needs to be carbon neutral, or we need to achieve the net zero status.
Yeah.
Correct? I mean, this includes developed markets, underdeveloped markets, developing markets as well. Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Every country had its own agenda, its own target. UAE is 2050. Then there is, for example, some countries in India, I believe, is 2060.
Wow.
So every country had its own independent agenda today in order to basically achieve carbon neutrality. That's the state agenda. Then after the state, the larger corporates have their own agendas in order to achieve net zero status.
Wow.
Now, it is a trickle down. So if a country was to achieve net zero, how can it achieve if the ecosystem
It's not supporting
is
it.
not, so everyone will be transformed. So everything you see around you, you touch, feel, hear, the lights, the cloth that's around you, or whatever it is, every single business is going to be impacted by this.
Yeah.
So,
And contributing to achieving
so this way, so businesses, the larger corporates have also have their own agendas. Banks today have their own agendas.
Yeah.
Because in order for them, once they achieve it, the countries achieve it then.
Yeah, and some businesses, by the way, are blocked from some deals if they don't have such plans.
So I'll give
Right?
you an example. We had one of our leading clients, I can't name them, but we mainly have our tier 1 partners working with Phils today. Initially, they were like, it's not on the agenda, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward, they got an RFP. And in the RFP, it mentioned what sustainable action are you taking and what products are you offering.
Yeah.
I got a call in the next 30 minutes. So the thing is, everything is going to evolve around this now. So it is a trickle-down effect. So it is the global agenda, the country agenda, having effect on the corporates, SMEs, having then effect on the consumer as well. Because there are two types of pressure. It's like a sandwich, okay? So there's a global pressure and there's consumer-driven pressure. There are two types of pressure. And because of that, there's regulatory pressure as well. So some companies are forward-looking.
Yeah.
Some companies will voluntarily opt in to become more sustainable. Now, some companies would not want to be, but then the regulations will push them. For example, in Australia, it's mandated for the SMEs today to disclose their emissions and then offset it.
And they know how to do that?
Yes, they do.
Or this is the role of the infrastructure which you put in place?
There are many infrastructure players out there in the market, but not many. I think we need more players like Phil's in different parts of the world in order to basically serve this surging demand. Now, what is the demand looking like? This is going to be like an educational session on this piece, right?
This is the purpose of it.
How many of you know that how much carbon emissions we produce every single year? Does anyone?
Maybe Dr. Carlo would know.
Who doesn't know? Raise your hands. Who doesn't know, raise your hands. Okay, it's good. So, yeah. So globally, we are producing today 51 billion tons of carbon emissions. That is the number that we are producing every single year. Then, on top of that, we have something else. We already have 1.5 trillion tons of carbon emissions already in the atmosphere. So the 51 billion tons is the addition to the 1.5 trillion. Okay?
Oh my God, okay.
Now, in order to achieve the net zero status, there are two strategies for any organization to do it. The first strategy is decarbonization. You decarbonize and make your processes more efficient. That's where, green technologies and less usage of electricity, clean energy powering the electricity, etc. That's decarbonization. But then there is carbon removal. As per the global reports, IPCC reports, which is the main body that is talking about sustainability and sharing the data and the stats, in order to achieve net zero, 80% will be decarbonization. 20% is going to be carbon removal, because we have gone past that stage in terms of polluting the atmosphere that we cannot just decarbonize and remove it. We need to have carbon removal. Now, what is carbon removal?
That was my next question. Yeah.
Carbon removal is when there are two types of carbon removals. There is nature-based carbon removal, and there is technology-based carbon removal, okay? That is human-engineered. Nature-based carbon removal is like planting trees. That's a carbon sink. But there's no silver bullet that only if you plant trees, you'll be able to eliminate the 1.5 trillion already in the atmosphere. That is why you have 17 SDGs. And if you look at there's colorful blocks that you would see with United Nations. Every block represents something. The first one is no poverty, and then second one is zero hunger. So planting trees is not the only sustainable action. Anyways, so carbon removal, planting trees, one carbon sink. The second is that you cannot just plant trees and save the planet and remove the carbon from the atmosphere. What you need for that is solutions like direct air capture. I'll explain what direct air capture is. It is a large fan that is deployed in sometimes in the middle of nowhere. And what they do is that they suck the air and it passes through that specific fan. Like imagine a large turbine or a large fan. When it passes through it, there's a process that heats the air in process, right, in the middle, when it's passing through. And when it's heated, it eliminates the carbon from the atmosphere and from that air, basically. That's what it does. It's direct air capture. And after that, the carbon, the CO2 is then transferred in the liquid form, and then it's solidified, and then you have a new economy, which is like carbon, CO2 made rocks as well, and some people are building diamonds as well, apparently, in the future. So these are two types of carbon removal things that we have. Now, the other thing is, why is this important and what is the growth of this? Right now, the carbon removal market stands, Ahmed, at $4 billion. Okay? By 2030, it is going to be up to $40 billion in 6 years, which is 10x. Okay? By 2050, it is going to be $250 billion. Right? So you go to see that all the countries and all the organizations today, that's why they're looking towards the net zero targets. It's very important for all of us to do that, but in order for us to do that, two ways, decarbonization and carbon removal, and that's where we come in.
A lot of information. I hope you were able to digest half of it.
Professor Namir.
But what I can say, we should all avoid unconscious bias, but I am intentionally biased to what Fels and what Namir is doing for a reason. Namir, if you remember our first meeting, where did we meet, if you remember, first time we meet together?
In your office, properly.
in Dubai Marina Mall, if you recall.
Yes, oh yes, correct.
Yes, right? That was our very first meeting. And I didn't know Namir at that time that he was working on his startup, which is Fels, which is not a startup anymore, which is doing very well and working with the biggest tier 1 clients in the Middle East. I got immediately biased to him, and I remember very well in that meeting, if you recall, Namir, when you showed me the app and I downloaded and I paid actually I paid like few dirhams, if you recall, using Fels and Apple Pay.
One of the use cases I remember was QR code.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I wanted to be one of the very early people who contribute to this, even by very, very small thing, but then we became very close
The guy
friends.
has a good memory, I must say.
Yeah.
I couldn't recall.
Especially with the special people, you have to have good memory. So I recall very well this, and then we became very close friends, and we used to have a lot of meetings together. And even I recall, Namir, in my previous job at the entertainer, I wanted to put with every meal people to pay back for their carbon footprint impact. That was one of the items which was very high in my agenda. Namir, if I go deeper into the infrastructure, if you can tell us, now we know the big picture, now we know the government's agenda, now we know how governments and countries are prioritizing. If we go to the infrastructure piece of your work, how it works. I am sure that a lot of people here don't know how do you connect to the banks? How do you connect to, like for example, your recent agreement with Etisalat? What does it mean for people? What does it mean for companies? How do you connect? How do you enable banks? How do you enable companies to achieve zero or lesser carbon footprint?
So I will connect the dots in a couple of ways over here, and thanks for the question. So I will again throw the number of 51 billion tons, and I'll paint the picture. 51 billion tons of carbon emissions we're producing every single year. Carbon emissions is a product of consumption. You consume, you emit. Consumption is a product of spending. You spend to consume, be that a corporate payment or be that a retail payment. Yeah? And spending is a product of payments. So the real genesis point of understanding where the consumption is happening from is payments. Now, our approach in Phils has always been, and now we can openly share, was like rather than going for one single merchant or retailer, we wanted to the strategy was to one shot hits all, right? So, or at least the massive ones. Then we realized it is very important to enable the infrastructure companies who are powering these larger corporates and retailers as well. I mean, if I go and spend time with one of the retailers, it's going to take too much time. In any case, they will go to the infrastructure company to enable. Why can't I enable the infrastructure company, which then can enable everyone else? So that's what we did. Now, coming to the point where we're talking about what it means to partner with such larger players is the same, what I just mentioned, that our connectivity then helps us, like partners like Etisalat, GDIA, Magnati, Mashrik, many other larger players that I'm forgetting as well, our partners. They are able to enable their
Wio
businesses. Huh?
Wio?
Vio. I mean, not Vio yet. No, not yet. They'll come to us after seeing the technology. So basically what happens is going to be the access to different businesses is what we were able to do. When businesses are enabled, the businesses are able to enable the larger consumers in the masses. So for example, with Magnati, what we're doing, and with GDIA, what we're doing is that the merchants, like the larger merchants, will be able to calculate the emissions for every single transaction. And the two things after that. They can basically enable the customers to opt in and offset partially. We have different methodologies for that. Or second, the merchants could offset on their own. So there are many things that we are offering in that case. So that is the reason why we partner with these larger infrastructure companies in order to ensure that we have mass access.
This is great. I have the closing question, which is maybe the easiest question for you, Namir. Okay. I know you trust me when I say the easiest, you know that it's going to be the easiest. You dealt with many banks and you dealt with many organizations and you dealt with many potential clients and existing clients. Do you see the response to sustainability is kind of me too from them? Like if X bank doing that, I have to do that as well? Or you see it as I want to be the first, or you see genuine care about the environment? How do you classify your potential clients and clients?
I see both, to be very honest, Ahmed. We have seen those who join. So you see, I mean, there's always the one that takes the first step. There's always one player and a couple of players who understand the potential of this, who is well aware, who are well educated, well read, well aware. And they realize
This is a genuine person.
yes,
He wants really to do it. Yeah.
but they see it not so. Sustainability is not CSR. Sustainability is one of the biggest revenue drivers in the market today and in the future. I mentioned voluntary carbon markets is $250 billion, right? Isn't that a number enough to widen up anyone's eyes? It is.
Even 10% of it.
Number two, it is today, everyone knows that every single product is going to be linked with some form of sustainability behind it. If you are not, then either your customers will leave you. Number two, either your regulations will mandate it for you and you're not ready for that. And then if you're not ready for that, you will eventually lose the first mover's potentially advantage. By the way, it's not really important to be the first mover in every single thing, but you might potentially lose it. And three, customers will start assessing you based on that. So we have seen, really, honestly, we have seen great genuine interest from some of the larger financial institutions who have been working with us. They understand the revenue opportunity to it. They understand the opportunity on how to scale this. And then once we announced the partners, there were more and more players lining up. So it's this is like a startup kind of advice as well, and I'm sure many of you have great experience, but it is always important to have a few key trailblazers behind you, and then the rest will follow. Exactly. So we saw that.
Yeah. And Amir, thank you very much. If anyone have any questions, we have a question here. Who is giving the mic to the gentleman? Guys, organizers, hello? There's a question on the stage.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Nameer, and thank you, Ahmed, for a very insightful session. My name is Amitabh. I work with United Nations, and I'm a UNFCCC member. I'm a COP moderator as well. So some very interesting statistics that you shared with us, Nameer. All right. I agree with you when you said that sustainability is not anything to do with CSR. It absolutely has got nothing to do with CSR. In fact, CSR is now becoming part of sustainability factors going forward, and this is what we advise the governments and enterprise customers globally. But yes, sustainability is again a 360-degree initiative which the corporations, governments should evolve going forward. And Amir, you gave us some statistics which are basically in the right direction, but the voluntary carbon markets are going to give way to the compliance carbon markets, which are built at $15 trillion market by 2014 as per Morgan Stanley and Grisham House, right? So in that concept, do you think that Middle East is all set because we are a large energy producers? How are we aligned to the concept of net zero, which again is becoming defunct because there is, what we do is when we estimate carbon emissions, it is a guesstimate. And then what we remove is also a guesstimate. So how can we, one guesstimate minus another guesstimate can be a net zero, was a debate that we could not conclude in this COP28. Hopefully we will do it next year or by COP 2030 or whatever. Right? So since you are exposed to the banking sector, can you just highlight one or two major initiatives that the banking sector or fintech sector is doing to reach at least one aspect of sustainability?
So I will break your question in a couple of questions, right? So the first thing is the guesstimates piece, right? So very important for us to understand. And I'm going to link what's happening in the fintech space and how can we go from estimations to more accurate calculations when it comes to emissions. Right now, globally, there is one way to do this is to understand the basic, I'll link it to transactions, all right? Very basic way to do this, you get the basic information, then you hit it with our own science algorithms, then we hit back on the emissions. Right now, we do not have access, as per the open data laws, in terms of what are you buying. We don't know that, right? But we know where you're buying from. In order to achieve that, it is very important for open data laws to emerge more and more in the space, which then gives us access to understand what independent individual consumers are actually buying. So if you're going to Carrefour, for example, are you buying bread or are you buying batteries or whatever you're buying? We're able to see that. Based on that, we're able to assess more accurately what your purchases are. So certainly the open data laws are going to play a very, very critical role in order to really streamline and expose the actual emissions that we are producing on a consumer level. Very critical. So I think one thing is the fintech industry doing playing a role, critical role in advocating for open data laws to be in place. The second thing is that you mentioned that this region is a very large energy producer, and of course there is more, I would say, pressure on the region as well in order to decarbonize quicker as well. What I've seen so far personally with working with so many larger corporates as well, and the interest is, the level of seriousness is really high, I must say that, right? But intent to action is happening now, but action takes time. Because of course, when you're talking about action, you need infrastructure companies to be enabled at the back. That is exactly why we took this approach to enable the infrastructure, that the action talk can be implemented. Then the third piece is that lately, the fintech industry has seen a boom of 200% in climate tech, and especially in the fintechs as well. There's been almost 200% in surge in investments as well. Mm-hmm. That shows you that there's a specific sector within the fintech industry focusing on climate tech. Third, the other thing the fintech industry is doing is very important, is to catalyze the money movement. Now imagine, even if you talk about carbon markets, in carbon markets there's one issue, double counting, right? I mean, I can sell one credit to 100 people and no one would ever know. So what we did at our side as well is that we enabled ourselves with the layer 1 blockchain company called Sui, where whatever purchase and sell that Phils does is all on the ledger, and whoever offsets is also on the ledger, bringing transparency to the system, right? Which again is a very, very critical thing.
Which company is that, sorry?
So we are working with Sui. I mean, we just won an award as well for that.
Okay. And they do that with many organizations like yours, so many companies like yours?
We are the only ones. We're the only use case for them on sustainability, because we're doing it globally with them.
Oh, great.
So we have the real world use cases like the financial sector, and then we have Web3 use cases where we are powering the gaming sector as well on sustainable action, because there's a lot of computing power that gets involved.
It's very new for me as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So bringing in transparency into the system when it comes to the carbon market as well via blockchain is another thing that the fintech industry is doing as well. And lastly, and most importantly, when it is through what fintech is doing and through companies like us, and we need more of them, there's education, we call this nudging, being enabled for the normal consumer and retailer. So that how much, at least there's some level of education and awareness on what this purchase that you're doing is doing to the environment. Like for example, when you're going, I'll give you a small example. You're buying something from Starbucks or anything, you would see a calorie next to it, right? So you will make a decision based on that, right? So you start having this subconscious thought, oh no, I shouldn't have this 400, 500 calories right now, right? So I'm just thinking out loud. So the fintech industry again is playing its part in terms of educating the masses. Lastly, because this is a part of the value chain, right? So once the carbon markets are supporting projects, right? Projects that are making real impact.
Yeah.
When the money is going to them, what are they doing with the money is another question, right? So in order to basically make it more transparent, there are solutions specifically focusing on one, assessing the projects, onboarding the projects, getting them listed on platforms like us.
What do you
and
mean by
then-
solutions here? Do you mean that there is a tech already providing this, or solutions by people who are doing that by their hands?
So in sustainability, right, or if you look at carbon markets, right, so there are, as mentioned, there are different types of nature-based solutions and tech-based solutions. In nature-based solutions, let's say there is a person in, I think you mentioned a friend of ours was here, but he's not. But for example, you have a land in Indonesia, and you're basically planting trees, right? So I'll give you, without going into specifics, imagine you're issuing credits for that,
Yeah.
right? But are you really planting trees or not, right? Are you really taking care of those trees or not, right? That's on the technology-based one. Let's assume this direct air capture, which is more easily quantifiable because it's a machine sucking the air in. We're able to see how much air has been sucked into the machine itself, and after that, what is the CO2 that was basically extracted out from it? How many tons was extracted out from it? So is this really happening or not? This is where solutions, a lot of fintech companies are focused on the supply side itself, right? We call it supply side because this is where the projects come from. Are these projects really legit or not? And third, when they're getting the funds, what are they doing with the funds? Are they really using the funds to basically build these projects, or what are they using it for? And that is where blockchain comes into play and plays a critical role, because once it's there, you can't change it.
Perfect. Did he answer your question? Because we went through
Yes.
many other questions
Yes,
in the
yes,
middle.
He answered it pretty well, but just to answer you more, the concept that Nameer was just explaining, the blockchain component is called track and traceability, which is available both with Vera as well as Gold Standard, free of cost on their website. So you can go and check about any carbon credit asset that you want to procure and see if that has been double accounted or not. So that the component of within the blockchain is called track and traceability, TNT, by the way. Right. One final
Track and traceability,
track
right?
and traceability. It's a UNFCCC component. Yeah. Okay. Half a second, sir. So one honest, since you mentioned that corporations are going with an intent to action for sustainability, right? So I just want a very, very honest answer here. Is it really an intent to action, or is it peer pressure? Just like Ahmed also said that Me Too, we are also doing it. Is it peer pressure or a real intent to action?
Honestly speaking, I've seen Me Too as well, right? There is Me Too, but Me Too is not bad at this point as long as there is peer pressure to do something, right? So I think at this point, what I would say be that there always is a trailblazer and the rest always follow, which is good. But our approach is simple. When we work with any of the larger financial institutions, and and then the ones that are working with us, they know who they are. They are really innovative, and they have been trusting us on the product development as well, right? So they are open to new ideas. So our approach is to ensure that there's a diverse set of products that are out there that are catering to vast industries, not just focusing, because we're doing a lot on the corporate side, we're doing a lot on the retail side. So we have seen Me Too initially, but then I think we have seen different sets of new innovative products being developed too. And you will see them out soon as well.
I wasn't Me Too when I was doing it with Fels, to be very honest. Even he remembers that I went against my CFO and a lot of people to make it happen and prioritize the budget.
I'm a hard negotiator, he knows that.
Yeah, he's very hard negotiator as well. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Nameer, for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you, as usual. And Nameer is available for a few minutes after this if you want to have any conversation or question to him. Thank you very much,
Thank
Nameer,
you for having me, sir.
being with me
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.